If you want to live like everyone else, think like everyone else. But if you want to live differently, you have to think differently. One of the flagship characteristics of genius is what's called divergent thinking. Convergent thinking, which is its opposite, is the standard for most people. It's based on narrowing options toward a single right answer. But when we embrace divergent thinking, we're able to suspend pre-held assumptions by looking for alternative answers. And it turns out, most things in the world are actually non-binary, meaning they're not as black and white as we may think. Divergent thinkers know that for most questions, there are multiple correct pathways to finding an answer. This is about changing the process by which we think, by enhancing creativity while decreasing ignorance. See, if rational thought creates logical, linear, but limited answers, then irrational thought can create non-linear but more imaginative solutions that can lead to better results. And so divergent thinking means training yourself to think illogically. Now, this isn't something that you either have or don't have. It's a skill that you can learn. You can actually train your mind so that it simply becomes the involuntary default of how you process information and solve problems. The default setting of the brain is to seek out shortcuts, right? It looks for the quickest, easiest, most obvious route to avail an answer. It optimizes for solutions that will require the least amount of processing power, much like a computer. This can be a good thing if the problem being solved is simple and straightforward. But just because something seems straightforward doesn't mean that it is, and it certainly doesn't account for the fact that we may not even be asking the right question in the first place. So divergent thinking not only helps us uncover multiple pathways to a correct answer, it also questions the premise of the point in question. It embraces the fact that there is always a solution, always other possibilities. The problem is, many of these potentialities are non-visible, hiding behind the veil of the conscious mind. So how do you access and activate the subconscious? How do you retrain your mind so that you can become a naturally contrarian thinker? There's 3 ways that I've isolated that work for me. Number 1, get into liminal thought. So liminal thought, if you're unfamiliar, is basically the same frequency as the alpha state. So if you've heard of the different brainwave states, when you're in alpha, the subconscious is slightly more activated than your typical waking state. Now, with the subconscious activated and with the brain working at the same time, you can discover ideas that you would not have been privy to before. And so one of the keys to becoming a divergent thinker who can uncover truly creative, different ideas is to work in liminal thought more often, and then to merge that mode of processing with the brain's normal neurological decisioning process until you've quite literally rewired your mind. To get into liminal thought, this is really just a place where you are able to be more free thinking than usual, so you don't typically want to be focused on something that requires a whole lot of thought. Anything that you can do autonomously that can kind of allow the mind to wander can be a good way to get into liminal thought. For example, something like driving, for me, I'm still focused on the road, but it's almost as if it's on autopilot in a sense, and that's a good place for me, for my mind to be more creative. I often receive really interesting insights and ideas when I'm driving because the mind is relaxed. Other activities like going on a run or workouts that allow you to get into a slightly more relaxed mode of thinking can invite in those insights and downloads. Number 2, begin coming outside of time more often. By engaging in activities that take you outside of time or even out of body for a period, you can alter your perception of things by rising above assumptions. And that's really what this is about, rising above assumptions. So if you can temporarily separate yourself from the material and the day-to-day, then you can free your awareness into a more objective yet more creative vantage point. Things like deep meditation, listening to music, or cardio workouts can all help you pop out of time and have the desired effect here. And then number 3, go beyond group think. One of the most difficult situations to go against the grain in is group settings. So often at work, we fall into line more easily, and we tend to acclimate to the status quo in a way that may restrict our ability to think freely and come up with outside-the-box ideas. Ironically, the more people that come together to try to solve a problem, the more likely they are to settle on a simple solution. More minds do not always make for better work, even if they make it temporarily easier. So ask yourself, ask your team questions to pique their imagination. Ask, what if it isn't exactly true that this is how it works? Or could it be possible that there may be another way? Also understand, we've been heavily programmed through school, through work, through our cultural conditioning to be linear thinkers, to be one-track minded, to find the answer. Shifting into this mindset is stepping away from the pack. It's diverting from what the world wants you to be. Yet divergent thinking is the way of artists, creators, entrepreneurs, innovators, inventors, and bringers of the new revolution, of the new earth. It's truly the key to accessing our true potential.